In this video, I'm going to color the Scatheless pub scene from my previous video at lightning speed as I talk about the process. Maybe it's because I mostly work in black and white, but I find color really intimidating and often find it hard to imagine artwork in color. I can imagine in color, but deciding how to color things is often a mystery to me. When I'm faced with something like that, I always try to break it right down. I've talked about this before, breaking things down into tiny little bites and picking the easiest to chew thing and munching on it first. While I was working on the line art, I referenced these cowboy boots, so I already had an idea in my head of what they look like and what color they could be. Plus, I live in the American South, I live in Music City, I see cowboy boots all the time. I believe these were on H&M's website, the cowboy boots and a nice loose short dress. Their dress was white, this dress is not gonna be white. I find white a weird thing to color in shade, so I just picked another color. I decided to go with a mustard color because it's fall. And I felt like the warm yellow went well with this like light warm brown on the boots. A little bit of a sort of wheat fall country feel. I don't color neatly between the lines. I like the texture of the large marker strokes. This brush is actually based on Copic markers, so I like to get that marker texture. So usually what I'll do with separate layers is make large marks, sweep largely across the image, which my computer hates, or this program hates. It's probably CSP. And then clean it up after, which takes a long time. If you see the little box splash on the screen, my printer is out of ink and it won't stop complaining about it. I have a perpetual ink system, so I just need to squirt some more ink in there, but I haven't been printing anything for a long time, so it can shut up. Once I have a base layer of color, I like to use Multiply, the Multiply brush, to give a little shade and a little depth. Not in a perfect detail. I like to, again, keep a little texture, keep it a little messy. And in some areas, blend it. And it turns out I did her eye color wrong. I'll have to go back and make them brown. I always do her eyes blue, and then I'm reminded they're actually brown. For the skin tones, I actually pulled up a previous pub scene with everybody hanging out and stole the shades from there. They're not perfectly the same, but it's close enough because everyone's a little different. And the shading around the hair and ears and face, again, is the Multiply tool with the blender over the top. The tables I've already drawn in a previous chapter, so I already know that they're black, so that's an easier one to eliminate. And then next, the hair. Everyone's got a particular hair color. I can easily eliminate it and just hit everybody at the same time. Everything that's going to be black I can hit all at once, except for Puka's suit. That's a different situation. And on the base brush, or the base marker, I keep the opacity lowered, and that helps create that texture. So especially in the hair and the curly hair, it allows me to give it some shape and texture and not just have it flat and try to add texture with the Multiply tool. Something in the texture settings on the side of the brush made this like mottled effect. That wasn't on purpose, but I just went with it because I thought it looked kind of cool. It served the purpose of adding more texture and a different texture. I like happy accidents. Just like the hair, I go through and do all the skin because it's something I'm comfortable with and I can knock out all at once. Everybody's got shading in about the same kind of place. Fia is written as a darker character, so I gave her a darker skin. Lottie asked me to make it even darker, so later on I'll darken her skin a little more. For the depth on the eyes and to give them a little glow, with color I do it in 3 shades, the lightest along the bottom, a mid-tone along the center, and then up towards the top near the eyelid, I'm going to make it darker. It gives the eyes some dimension and looks a little like they have depth and light is hitting them. By doing the skin, hair, and eyes first, these are all decisions that have already been made. I can procrastinate and put off the decision of the color of their clothes, which involves a little more thinking and decision making. And it also gives me time while I'm working on the colors that are already decided to think about those colors and consider what each character might be wearing. Thankfully, I've been working on them long enough that I think I have a sense of what they might wear more than I have in the past. At the beginning, I had no clue. I don't know anything about clothes. I'm not a fashionista in any sense. Do these clothes stop me from being naked? Are they clean? Okay, we're good. On the scale of easy things to color, I looked up each instrument, and generally they're made out of different kinds of wood, so it allowed me to do different shades and give them a little separation and personality. I try to let the opacity work its magic, and if I have some happy accidents, like on the side of the violin, I'll often leave it. We're not going for realism, just a vibe and some texture and mood. A hint of wood grain, an impression of lighting. Unless I'm using the erase eraser to clean. I may use it to color or to lighten, and again, reduce the opacity quite a lot and just scratch over things a little bit so everything's not flat. I snuck Fia in some little red shoes. She's got a little spicy personality, and she's really tiny. So I thought if she was going out with these girls who are much taller than her, she might opt for a nice set of spikes. I spent some time looking up the outfits. I thought Fia would look good in a sort of light yellow cardigan, somewhat reflecting Kira's golden dress. So I Googled, outfits with red shoes and outfits with yellow cardigan. With Fia, I started with her red shoes and Googled outfits with red shoes, because I am simple. One that looked really fun to me was this navy white polka dotted dress with a creamy yellow cardigan. And I had drawn her with leggings, so I just carried on the color from the dress down into the leggings. By looking up outfits, I can let someone else do the coordinating. Again, I never got into clothes and fashion, so I'm no good at coordinating clothes and what looks good together, unlike Lottie. So I looked up fall 23-24 fashion, fall 23-24 colors, because the industry picks colors and shapes every year for the different seasons. And there was a lot of brainstorming samples where people had put colors and images together for ideas for clothing and outfits. One of them was a combination of mint accessories over a chocolate center. So the outfit I found was actually pants rolled up with mint socks and a mint jacket over the top. I like the combination, so I used that for Eve. And on the boots, just use a couple of different chocolate colors to give it some dimension. And her hat is supposed to be kind of brown, but I figure if you're wearing real clothes, they're not all going to be the same dye lot, so they'll be a little different in color. So I put a little bit of red in this one. Although Fia has white hair, just leaving it white would be really flat, kind of dull, and not reflect the lighting of the room. So I used a light lavender to give her a little shade. Gray seemed like it'll be a little flat and not as dynamic a color. And it's not that she's gone gray, as far as I'm aware. She just has white hair. I thought Fionn might wear a good old flannel shirt, reflect the Western theme of Kira's shoes a little bit, connecting them. So I used a screen tone that I've got of sort of wavy flannel pattern and jeans. He's not a complicated boy. Kale, I put in dad jeans with a dad sweater. Nice thick dark woolen sweater and frog togs. The real sweater had a mixture of colors in it and even some white speckles of wool, but again, we're not going for detailed realism, just the impression and the vibe. It's good to have some truth in there, but it's not necessarily to get too deeply detailed. Frog togs are kind of canvas shoes. Kale's a little relaxed, so I didn't want to do them brown and make it look like they were leather, unlike Fionn's shoes. And again, I did some Googling. In contrast, Puka, with his mythology, will be dressed to the nines. So I gave him really fancy shoes. Again, just looked up men's dress shoes, looked through the search results a little bit till I found one that felt right. And then I fell across another that had these shoes had these really fancy details, so I went back and added those. I wanted them to be black because he's all in black, but with that table leg being black, I figured they'd just disappear, so I made them like a dark brown. I always use this texture brush for Puka because he's a shapeshifter that's, he's not really a human. And it took a few tries to figure out how to use this and make it work in color. Now the white speckles on this brush are actually gray. It's not a gap or it's not translucent. So I did a layer with that brush and then attached it to a layer of purple. Experimented with a few different colors. Purple seemed to feel right, but then gave his vest a slightly different color. I think I put some red in there just to make it stand out a little bit so he's not flat. And I think I went back and put some on his socks and shoes. Give his accessories a slightly different color. I experimented with red and purple and couldn't remember how I got the layering to work, of course, so it took me a minute to remember. So I did a little bit of purple and red, a little bit of erasing to give it some lighting and texture. Instantly forgot how I did it, so it took a few tries with the waistcoat. It's kind of funny to watch at this speed. What the hell am I doing? I don't remember. Somehow I figured it out. I think the textured layer is underneath, and I kept getting them backwards. Make his buttons a slightly different shade so they stand out. And just like Fia's hair, his shirt is not going to be plain white. It's going to have a little color. I didn't want it to look too dirty, though. Almost every gray color that I use looked dirty. He's fancy. He's not going to be in a dirty shirt. So again, I hit the internet. What are people wearing under their three-piece suit? And more often than not, people were wearing blue shirts. Or white. Mostly white. And so it took a minute to find what are people wearing other than white shirts under their fancy three-piece suit. And I found blue, so we went with it. Redid his socks to give him texture. And then I had texture to his shoes, because once I got the suit done, it looked weird that he's got this textured suit and untextured socks and shoes. Because his socks and shoes are just as fake as he is. He's a shapeshifter. They're not real shoes. They're an impression of shoes. Aiden, given his age, I wanted to put him in something old men farmers might wear. So we've got a tweed suit with a sweater underneath. An ugly semi-Christmas sweater. And Googling this, there are some truly hideous combinations. I think one of the suits I referenced, actually I referenced the color of this tie, was a weird looking, I think it was crocheted or knitted. It was awful. Again, with the blue shirt. A nice traditional green tweed. For Aiden's shoes, I looked up kids' loafers. Like, what color are they going to be? Wherever there are glasses, I wanted to, give the impression that you're seeing through the glass. So everything's a little bit lighter. And I Googled the beer glasses too. Actually, I've had a hard time finding a good example of tables filled with beer. When I was looking up musicians, a lot of them were drinking water, not alcohol. And then onto the alcohol. Kale, of course, is having whiskey and Guinness. Fiona is having a lighter colored beer. The photos that I eventually found, the head of the beer was smeared on the upper part of the glass where it had been drank. So I tried to add that in. I tried to think about what everyone might be drinking. Fia, I thought, would probably pick the same thing as Kara in their little half pints. I remember as a kid when we'd go to the pub, more often than not, the women would get half pint, whereas the men would get a full pint. So I gave them slightly littler glasses. Tato are kind of chip that you find in Ireland. And this table would be for whoever is sat beyond the group. Aiden probably has a black and tan or something. I didn't want to leave the little beer mats white, but also didn't want to go in and detail them because they usually are advertising a beer or something. So they've got a logo on and they're heavily detailed. So I just did a light red wash to give them a little texture and a little color. Blue didn't work out. I looked up different colors of these logos and they tend to be black and green and red. So I went with red. And I decided to keep the clean lines to the characters, and everything beyond them used the blender tool, loosely wiping over everything to give it a little detailed feeling, and then even more so on the background. I looked up bar pews to see what color they tended to be. A lot of them were brown, but I thought that might blend in too hard with the floor and the tables. Some were blue, and I thought that would swallow all the characters that are wearing blue and gray, so we went with red. That was another popular color. I even looked up bar floors and wood floors and see how they're textured and how they're colored, and stole some colors with my little ink dropper. And it may look like I'm purposely layering this, but I'm not. For the background, I actually spent a lot of time playing, wiping on color, wiping it off, moving it around, trying different shades. And it's all on a different layer so I can clean it up and just play without ruining or damaging anything that I've already got on there. And just like the foreground, I didn't want the wood and the background to be flat, so I didn't do like one broad color. I put in a couple of rows and then just blended it out. Let the colors mix, let the red mix in. Try to keep the top dark because there is a shelf up there, but I didn't want it to be so detailed that I put in a shadow, even with them sitting on the pew like an impression of a shadow, but not so detailed as to do an actual correct shadow. To help with the cleanup, I did a white layer. Everything got too dark, so I lightened it again. Did it loosely, let some happy accident texture stay in there, playing with some different colors, trying some red, trying to give the impression of light and shadow on the floor. As I was looking up floors, there was a lot of like yellow in the wood, so I used my little dropper and stole the color and just started putting it on there and seeing what it looked like. Wood floors, like all the planks are not the same color, so I'm going to put in different shades, kind of alternating and then blend them out a little bit. Although all of this is wood, there are going to be different kinds of wood and different ages of wood and different stains and stuff like that. So I would put on a lot of color and then realize that it was all the same color and have to go back and find another color and moosh that in for a little while and add some shading, and it was all the same color again. So I clean it up and erase some and add another color and just build it up. In the original concept art, I never actually colored the windows of the white shoulder, but with all the red and warm brown, amber seemed like an appropriate color for the bullseye glass. So I again went back to Google, looked up amber bullseye glass to get an idea of what kind of color it has, how the color works through the glass and through the rings on the glass, and how it looks like almost like a weird nipple. So in this case, a weird yellow nipple. And in the original artwork, there's a planter out in front. And this time of year, it's not going to be full of flowers or anything, but there's probably still going to be vegetation in it. So I wanted to respect that shadow and have the shadow in the bottom. They're going to be out at night or in the evening, so I'd imagine there'd be a street light outside shining in a little bit. It's not going to shine in brightly because you've got enough light inside, but enough to affect the shading on the glass. Watching me work on the windows makes me think of watercolor, watching the blending, but watercolor never agreed with me. I could never get to do anything that I wanted. I tried oil. It was a little better because you can moosh stuff around around and mix your colors, but I never took the time to learn actually how to use oil and how to layer it properly. I don't know why I didn't try digital sooner, especially with these markers. It's an interesting combination of watercolor, oil, and Copic markers without the commitment of Copic markers. Because once you mark on the paper, that's it. You're committed. I like how with oil you can redo and redo and redo until it becomes a muddy mess, and then just wipe it off and try it again. And digital does that and facilitates that in a much cleaner way. And allows for a lot of experiment. Because I don't go in knowing what colors I want. I have no idea. Color is hard. I just have to explore it and figure it out as I go along. And digital really helps with that. You have layers, so if I set on something and like it, I can set it to its own layer, lock it down so I won't ruin it, and work on another layer instead. And if that goes wrong, I can delete it. Once I got a base color on the windows, I thought I'd pull in that orange to the rest of the image, and then decided only to do it halfway. With the pots on the shelf, I initially decided, oh, I'm going to color these in, and then they didn't want to. I colored them over and over and added shades and added white and added yellow, and they just didn't want to, so I moved on. Went back to the wood. I wanted to add in not only some orange coming in through the window, but maybe some yellow and warmth from the overhead lights. So the left-hand side of the image is going to have more of that yellow from more of the pub lights, and the right hand of the image is going to have a bit more orange from the window. And again, I'm going to be relaxed and wide with that pen. I want the texture. I want the happy accidents. I want the layering and the mixed opacity. Once I'd set on this sort of red, green, warm autumnal color, some of the shading that I was using was a little too green, and some of the wood color just didn't want to work. So I decided to go with a layer of overall yellow and just make it warm, make it sunny in there. Just keep building and layering, adding more shade, adding more light. And this is all to the background layer. It's not affecting the characters who are in a higher up foreground layer. But we'll go back and fix that. I think I realized about halfway through, these guys would have light on them too. It's not just going to be the furniture. I think I messed with that wood paneling over and over and over and just deleted it and colored it and deleted it and colored it. In my mind, I imagined it as like really dark wood that's old and really badly worn, smoke covered, but it didn't feel right. So I ended up lightening it up and letting some of that red and orange and yellow shine through. This yellow layer is theoretically where the lighting is hitting, so it's not going to hit under the tables. So I've left that a little thinner. And this all developed organically as I was playing and working on the image. Another fun thing of digital is being able to play with the different color levels, and I kept going back to yellow, to this sort of warm amber. I'd forgotten Fion's chair, so I went back and did Fion's chair. Poor Fion, always abandoned. And sometimes it's fun to change the colors and just leave them kind of wild. And Puka's leg, oh my god, I had to finish Puka's leg, and once again completely forgot how I did it. I think I gave up by the looks of it. So there you have it, from lines to full color. If you watched all the way to the end, I really appreciate it. I'll hopefully be back soon with another time lapse. I think I'm going to work on a gory Puka picture next. Watch out for that.